Very recently, celebrities have started losing weight and in most cases resorting to unhealthy and unsafe ways of doing it, using a particular kind of drug to make themselves lose weight rapidly, allegedly. After a decade of the BBL body and pumping fat into our curves, one fine day skinny seems to be in. Let's dive into why beauty standards change so much and so fast. In the 1900s, every decade had a very specific standard of beauty for women. These ideals changed quickly and dramatically, bouncing from one extreme to the other. In the 50s, Marilyn Monroe was the beauty ideal, curvaceous and flirty with delicate yet full facial features and bold red lips. This was known as the blonde bombshell look. She was the original poster girl for the perfect hourglass shape and the over-the-top glamorous Hollywood look. When Audrey Hepburn arrived at the scene a few years later, she was very unlike Marilyn, in fact the exact opposite, a naturally slim brunette with charming dark eyes and angular facial features. She wasn't as over-the-top like Marilyn, but exuded grace and a laid-back sophistication. For people, this was a fresh look. She dressed to highlight her graceful frame and thus the pendulum swing towards the other end of the spectrum. It was a time of rapid and radical changes in beauty standards for women. From the Victorian era to the roaring 20s, from the golden age of Hollywood to the swinging 60s, the wild and free 70s, loud and vivid 80s, and the 90s heroin chic, women's ideal body types and fashion choices shifted dramatically to reflect the social and cultural trends of each decade. Some of the factors that influenced these changes were technological innovations, war, economic conditions, and media. Women's beauty standards were also shaped by the expectations of men who often had more power and influence in society. However, women challenged and resisted these standards in various ways, such as by creating their own subcultures, expressing their individuality, and advocating for their rights. Throughout the 1900s, women's beauty standards were not only a reflection of their times, but also a struggle for freedom of expression and rights. In the modern day and age, women's beauty standards continue to shift. The pendulum swung aggressively from one unhealthy standard of beauty that included starvation and eating disorders to another unhealthy and dangerous aesthetic that encouraged the pursuit of unattainable perfection and the biggest proportions that only a plastic surgeon could grant you. A Brazilian butt lift is notorious for being a surgery with the most number of deaths. Around this time, the body positivity movement was on full speed. It was a movement that aimed at promoting all body types regardless of their shape, size, color, or ability. The movement has its origins in the fat acceptance movement of the 1960s, which challenged the discrimination and stigma faced by fat people in various aspects of life. Over time, the body positivity movement has expanded to include other marginalized groups who also faced oppression and exclusion based on their appearance and ability. Women embraced their own uniqueness and diversity and encouraged others to do so. They followed a set of different beauty trends such as natural hair, body positivity, or other alternative styles. These were much easier and attainable. It made many women feel proud and unapologetic about their bodies. However, they were toxic trends nonetheless. Except this time, they were trends imposed on women by women themselves. Shaving, tweezing, losing weight, wearing makeup, and making an effort to look pretty was demonized and branded as anti-feminist. Some argue that the movement has been co-opted by mainstream culture and commercial interests, and that it fails to address the structural and systemic causes of body dissatisfaction and inequality. Others contend that the movement normalizes obesity and ignores the health risks associated with it. Moreover, some people feel excluded or alienated by the movement as they struggle to achieve a positive or neutral attitude towards their own bodies. A large group of people now wanted to see women in magazines and billboards, women who they think look like them and who can represent them better. This stemmed from the feeling of wanting to be accepted in society, that if you can't be the standard, then simply change it. Instead of not caring about beauty standards, we have started to obsess over it more than ever. Models are required by the industry to be thin and tall to fit into the pre-decided measurements of the garments to create a uniform look when each model walks down the runway. It is much easier for a designer to use less fabric and make a one size that fits all. Typically, designers use tools such as busts and mannequins when they are designing their clothes. These devices provide a very basic frame on which clothing can drape and hang. When designers transfer their clothes to a person, they want their designs to maintain this natural effect. Fashion models essentially become living racks for the clothing. Low body fat is a favorite of the industry, as bony features tend to jump out more in editorials and photo shoots. They look harsh and stern, further fulfilling the unattainable and cold aesthetic of high fashion runway and editorials. It is simply not meant and targeted towards everyone. Designers want their clothes to be displayed during the marketing process. They also appeal to positive concepts society holds with thinness, acting as a means to feel better or require something desirable. Is it that them putting out a certain ideal make people strive for it? Or is it that people find a certain look attractive and that's why brands cater to it? What do you think comes first? Let me know in the comments. Brands like Calvin Klein and Victoria's Secret always had tall, slender, and slightly athletic models with above-average facial proportions on the runway and as the face of their brand. This is because they wanted to sell an ideal to their consumers. They wanted to show people something they don't see every day, an image and physique that is mostly unattainable for the average population. Its motive was to depict peak feminine and masculine ideal for the eyes of their consumers, to sell a fantasy that fits their personal world built by the brand, to feed into the aspirations and idealistic needs of their audience. Companies have now changed the strict approach to pander to the masses by casting more diverse models and putting more unconventional looking people as the face of their brand. The demand of the consumer shifted from desiring a quote-unquote ideal peak beauty to wanting to see something they can relate to, or see how the clothes would look on someone who looks like them. Something that makes them feel seen and acknowledged by establishing a sense of relatability with the brand. Beauty standards throughout history served an ideal image of women and men, something that most people liked and strived for, wanted to be, or just look at. Whereas only lately it's been showcasing aspects that people generally do not strive for in order to promote acceptance towards these groups. A shift has been noticed from aspiration to acceptance. While it is admirable that now there is more inclusivity and diversity in the fashion and entertainment industry, most human beings are wired to look up to who we consider aspirational figures, whether in terms of aesthetic talents or other aspects. We strive on improving ourselves as individuals and achieving our personal goals. Inarguably, many people also want to see something unique just for the sake of it, something unachievable they don't get to see every day that wows them. Others simply love to be in their comfort zone and simply accept themselves for who they are, and they'd rather let the world change. Everyone's personal journey towards self-confidence, acceptance, and improvement is unique and must not be subjected to criticism. At the end of the day, beauty standards in media serves a purpose. The large majority of people find a certain look attractive, and that aspect sells it. Companies want to inherently make money. This is not a foreign concept. They will show us whatever we want to see in order to sell it. It all boils down to commerciability and capitalism. But sometimes it's also about what fits a particular brand's aesthetic. Companies just naturally gravitate towards a particular ideal for their own reasons, to perhaps convey a message or build on an immersive fantasy for the consumer. If liked and desired by too many people, that aesthetic then turns into a so-called standard of beauty. That is not to say that anything other than that is ugly or undesirable. We are not meant to look like the cover girls of Vogue magazine or the Victoria's Secret models. We are simply us, and that is enough. Everybody is beautiful in their own way. Our self-esteem must not be so fragile enough to depend on the current beauty standards or whether models look like us or not. With that being said, the good thing is that beauty standards in general are not fixed or universal, but rather dynamic and subjective. They reflect the changing times and the diverse perspectives and experiences of people. It has changed numerous times throughout history and will continue to do so till humanity exists. After all, beauty standards aren't standards at all. They're just trends, trends that are transient, trends that will constantly come and go throughout time.